Welcome to Darren Batchelder's Real Estate Investing Show. Each week, you will learn how to grow your wealth through real estate investing. Be introduced to the players that are getting it done and learn how you can get involved. And now, here's your host, Darren Batchelder.
Hello, everyone. Today we have a very special guest. We've got Kathryn Schmeltz here with us. Kathryn, appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, Darren, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So just a little bit on how I know Kathryn. So if you've listened to prior episodes, you've heard me say that I'm part of a multifamily mentorship group in the Dallas area, the Brad Sumrock group. And I joined about 4 years ago, and I think it was probably the first happy hour networking event that I went to. And shortly after being there, I ended up meeting Kathryn and her partner, Jimmy Edwards, who was actually on the show, episode 52. And, just met them, and we shared a beer and had a good time. And we've been friends ever since. So I really appreciate you coming on the show. First question I typically ask is, how many properties and how many units are you invested in?
Yeah, so I'm GP on 3 deals, about 400 units, a little bit more. And then I'm an LP on another 3 units with a total of about 750 units. Well, actually, I say that, but one of our LP deals just closed last week, and I got a check yesterday. So
that's not a bad thing, right?
Yeah. No, it's our first. Yeah, it's the first deal I invested in as an LP. Just went full cycle, so pretty exciting to get a large check.
Yeah, that's nice. To invest and then pretty much not do anything, other than read the emails that come out every month, and then all of a sudden come down the road and you get your money back plus a big check, and that's a nice thing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's fun.
So
it's kind of fun just watching it go through.
Absolutely. So share with the listeners kind of your background before you got involved with real estate investing. What was your background?
Yeah, so my background's a little bit different than most syndicators. Most syndicators seem to have like an IT and engineer background. My background's actually in multifamily. So when I graduated from college, I got a job with a company that owned about 5,000 units, about 26 apartment complexes. And at that time, when I was hired, the owner was transitioning from the corporate office being in St. Louis and transitioning it to be down in Dallas. So he hired a bunch of younger folks to start heading up that office. And so when we were there's about 5 of us, and he taught us everything about multifamily. I mean, he taught us about property management, vision, kind of the 101 of multifamily. So that was super important for like the foundation of multifamily. And then from there, I worked with the sister company, same company, just sister company that imported light fixtures, sinks, faucets, granite from China to put into their properties. And then we also sold to other syndicators or investors, owners. So then I did that for a while. Then I transitioned over to the construction arm of that same apartment company, and I did all the rehabs for them. So I put together I did all the purchasing for them for construction, and then I worked with the construction team and different rehabs, and kind of put in the orders of what they needed, from lumber to some of the products that we imported from China. And I kind of put together like different layouts of how to put the cabinets together in granite. So I did all that. So I've kind of got a pretty good knowledge of the construction aspect from multifamily. Then from there, I worked with a company, Omni Group, Brian Amos, which a lot of people in Dallas and Texas know about him. He does a lot of the physical due diligence for different investors and syndicators in the due diligence phase buying apartments. So I walked probably 5,000 units, analyzed over 100 apartment complexes for the investor, worked with the different trades, all the way from plumbing to electrical to roof systems, things like that. So I really got a good knowledge on the due diligence side. And at that same time when I was doing that, that's when me and Jimmy were kind of getting together and flipping houses. He needed some, he pretty much came to me and my husband at the time. This was probably 2013 or so. I was still working with Brian Amos at my day job, but he came to me and my husband, Andrew, and asked if he was flipping houses and asked if he could start getting he needed more money for the down payment to buy more houses. He wanted to get bigger and scale his flipping business. So we flipped a few houses. We gave him the down payment, flipped a few houses. And I was like, hey, Jimmy, I'm doing this on a larger scale, doing the CapEx renovations for multifamily. How about we partner together and do rehabs and flips? So then that's when I phased over to start working with Jimmy. We flipped 100 houses.
Wow, 100?
One year, I think we did more than 100. I think one year we did 50 houses.
Wow.
Yeah. So I say all that because my background is in apartments and in construction in the multifamily space. So it's kind of a little bit longer than probably your average person on background, but I think it's pretty important.
It is. And I knew you had a multifamily background, and I knew that you worked for Omni, but I didn't know what happened prior. Typically, I can't say it with you, but typically I'm like, look, listeners, you don't have to have a multifamily background to get into this. Listen to this guest. He or she didn't know what they were doing and they got in. But you spent, quite a bit of time and in different aspects of the business before you actually came over. So for you, it was more like, hey, I want to get on the other side of the table.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw a lot of people, in the due diligence phase working, we're walking units, and I realized that a lot of people didn't know what they were looking for. I mean, some people didn't even know what a clean out was. They were like, what is that circle on the ground that they're putting a camera into? And it's kind of crazy. And they're owning multi-million-dollar properties and don't even know a clean out. So just, I worked for that, but I knew when I was working with Omni and working with these investors and seeing what they knew and that is super lucrative, I knew I wanted to come back. But at the time, me and Jimmy flipped houses to build up enough capital to really go all in multifamily and have more money to move around.
Absolutely. So you said super lucrative. I mean, so you've got all this knowledge and you've got all these other people that are investing in it, and they're leveraging the knowledge that you have. And that's kind of the whole point, right? I mean, once you get into the ownership standpoint, everybody brings their different experiences, but you leverage also vendors that do this day in and day out.
Yeah, definitely. For sure.
So then you're flipping houses. That's a lot of houses you did. So, over 100 homes. So then your first multifamily deal, how big was that?
So our first one was 16 units. So it was pretty interesting. So one of the guys that I helped do the CapEx, implementation on his apartment, we were looking at a property. It was 26 units. Jimmy knew the guy. It was our first deal that we're looking at. He said, hey, Jimmy, it's off market. You could buy this property. And so we went through all the comps and really tried to understand it. This was before I did the mentoring program with Brad Summeroff. So we didn't know what we were doing. And it took us 6 months to analyze this deal. But at the time, we're looking at comps and looking at CoStar and realized that one of the guys I used to work with, Mac, owned the comp. So I called him, said, hey, we're looking at buying apartments now. I realized this is a comp. We're trying to underwrite it, blah, blah, blah. Well, a few months later, he called me and said, hey, Kathryn, I found a deal at 16 units. I found it. You can run it. You can manage it. You can do everything. I don't really want to do that. But I have a deal. Are you in? So I said, yeah, let me get Jimmy involved. And that's kind of how we got our first deal. It was kind of just organically with the partners. And then our other partner, Tim, came in because Mac invited him into the deal as well. So it was the four of us, 16 units in Grand Prairie. It was a C-, maybe a D+. It was It was a rough first deal. Completely re-tenanted it. There's a beautiful park across the street that nobody could use ever because there's like drug deals going on in the park. They were drinking 40s at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Cow.
I mean, it was crazy. Yeah, it was interesting to say the least. I'll tell you that.
One of the things that you didn't say this, but it sounds like it happened, is that I'm guessing you told people what you got, that you and Jimmy were looking for multifamily. And then that's what prompted the guy to say, hey, I've got this deal, versus.
Yeah.
And I think that that's important for, listeners' perspective, is that even if you're new, in the business and you're trying to get your first deal, you need to tell as many people as possible what you're looking for, because somebody may have somebody, that they're talking to. And if you don't tell them what you're looking for, you're not going to be, on top of their mind. So that's huge. I had another guest that he was talking to a bank president and he told him what he was looking for. And the next thing you know, he got a call from some broker that he didn't even have a relationship with. And the president of the bank had told the broker, and that broker called him. And the next thing you know, he picked up like a 50 or 60 unit deal. And so that's so important.
Yeah, I think that I really believe in that. Tell the universe what you want and the universe will come back. I mean, that's what we had to do with flip houses. A lot of the houses that we bought were because of referrals and because we told everybody we know that we're flipping houses. And so that random person you talk to at this random random meetup, or a friend of a friend had some, person that didn't want their house. It's just crazy how we saw that so much in single family that we knew that that's part of it, is to put everything out there and share what you're doing.
Absolutely. That's huge. So then you have that 16 unit, and then from there you guys go out and buy a deal outside of the Dallas market, right?
Yes.
So talk about that second deal.
So the next deal was 103 units in Lubbock.
So you went from 16 units to 103 units.
Yes.
And going from a single family to 16 units probably felt big.
Yeah, big. Mm-hmm.
Right?
And then 103.
And then going from
huge.
16 to 103, that felt big too. But I probably the 0 to 16, the 1 to 16 probably even felt bigger. I don't know.
Yeah. No, it did. But it was, it's different because the 16 unit, even though it was 16 units, it was townhouses. So it almost felt like 16 little houses all next door to each other. So it felt big, but the 103 was like an apartment complex,
right,
So that felt like, oh my gosh, we're actually owning a bigger deal. And then we syndicated that. The 16 unit, just the four of us bought it ourselves. So we didn't have any investors. But the 103 unit, we syndicated. That was our first syndication. It was in Lubbock. Me and Jimmy both went to Texas Tech. The reason why I know Jimmy is my husband and Jimmy actually went to Tech together and met in the dorms.
Oh, cool.
So that's how I knew Jimmy, is through my husband, actually. So we knew Lubbock. We lived there for 4 or 5 years. So we knew the market. It wasn't like we just bought a deal in Mineral Wells or something like that. So we felt comfortable with the market, even though it wasn't Dallas or Austin or Houston. And then honestly, when it came out and the broker told us about it, we thought it would actually be fun going to Lubbock and checking it out. We haven't been in a while. But the 103 unit was a C class. We bought it at 50% occupied. It was a hairier deal than I think most people are used to in the Brad Sumrock ecosystem.
50% occupied is low.
Yeah, it's not typical.
Yes,
it's not typical. Right. The other person I think ran out of money. And the chiller broke down in the middle of the summer. He lost a lot of residents. And he was just tired of it and just wanted out. So we came in, saved the day, bought it at 50% occupancy. I think he was leasing it to people that wasn't the best tenants in the world. So then it went down to 39% occupancy, which we knew that it was going to dip. It wasn't a surprise. And we had to raise extra money to cover pretty much the operating costs. But we were in it for 3 years. We sold it. We over doubled our investors' money in less than 3 years. And it was a great learning experience. I mean, you had to learn a lot. And for first of all, our first deal, a rough deal, a deal not in where we live. And I wouldn't trade it for the world, but we learned a lot, and it was blood, sweat, and tears the whole 3 years. I'll tell you that.
So talk about some of the learning lessons.
So I think one of the biggest lessons we learned, we flip houses, or we did. So we know how it is. We knew what we were getting ourselves into. We weren't really, nothing really was like, oh my gosh, we didn't see that coming. But one of the main things I think we learned is having the right management company at the property. We hired a management company that somebody else referred us to. We just were just going through all the motions. We had so many things on our list that we hired someone that we thought we would like, but we actually had to fire them probably, I don't remember, maybe 9 months into owning the property. They didn't share our vision. They didn't understand what we were doing, why we were doing it. And I think if we would have started out with the right management company from day one, I think we would have even exceeded expectations, even more.
But talk about that decision of, okay, you're, 6, 7, 8, 9 months, and you're seeing that their property management company, for one reason or another, is not, doing what you're looking to do. To make that decision to bring somebody new in, it's a big complex, and you're not there every day. You're in Dallas, and that's Lubbock. So talk about, was that a difficult decision, or was that an easy decision? And was the transition easy, or was it, have some bumps along the way?
It was a hard decision. We kept talking about it. We knew it wasn't the right fit, but we didn't know how bad it would impact changing. We thought it would be another dip before it got better. But finally, one of our other friends who used the same management company, they fired them. And they started using a different management company. And that kind of was like, okay, it's not just us. Right. We just don't have different expectations. So we fired them, got on a new management company. And we don't take that lightly, it was a big deal. But they took it and ran with it and understood. And it was so much different, the way that they managed and the conversations and getting things done. It was hard at first. We had to do everything all over again. But I think in the long run, it was way better. And it taught me to have a lot of conversations with them up front, make sure they understand your vision, make sure that you're aligned, ethics, all the things are just completely aligned before you take on the management company.
I think that those are great lessons to learn. I mean, also, if you were to go into another deal where you ran into that problem, now that you've gone through that process, you probably would pull that trigger a little earlier.
Oh, definitely.
If it's not going right, because I went through the same thing, and it was a hard decision to change property management companies, and it was talking to other syndicators and me asking, how tough is it? How that transition over, how difficult is that? And, it's just like, when you were younger and you had to, you were going through a breakup, right? I mean, it's, you got to pull off the Band-Aid, it's not an easy thing to do, have that conversation, but once you have it and then the new people are in, you're kind of like, thank goodness,
Yeah. Yeah. And at the time, obviously we bought a hairy deal, 50% occupied, went down. It's like, well, this is our first deal and this isn't typical. So are they doing a regular job or not doing a good enough job for our expectation,
Right.
you know? So it's like, do we have just way higher expectations?
Right.
So just, I was kind of like just trying to understand where we were. But once we did it, I mean, there's no looking back. And then that made us want to stay with the same management companies or like just have more upfront conversations and really get to know them and I guess do our homework a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's a big lesson. And, everyone says that multifamily is a team sport and, the property management company is a big part of that team. And, especially the on-site management, whether it's the, leasing manager and maintenance person, like how good are they and how are they managing the units and fixing problems and communicating with tenants, and all of that is so important. And if you're in Dallas and they're, in Lubbock, that you want to make sure you have the right people there.
Yeah. And another thing too is, since this property was in Lubbock, you have to have your ear to the ground. If you're just a new person in the space and don't have the connections and I mean, these people did work in Lubbock, but just in general, I mean, they need to know the contractors and know all the employees. So if they lose a manager, then they have a pool to work from. And I think that that's a big, important thing as well.
Right. I remember talking to you and Jimmy and, you guys were like, it was different being out in a different market because you had to find all your vendors, versus here in Dallas, we might be able to ask other syndicators, hey, who do you use for this? Who do you use for that? And get referrals. Yeah. You guys kind of had to go find that yourself.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
The other thing that talk about upgrades in like a tertiary market. I remember hearing from both you and Jimmy that it's a little different than being in Dallas, where like you see something down the street and you're just going to take a classic unit and you're going to upgrade it and you're going to get, whatever bump in rent. But in certain markets, they may not pay up for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's another, difficult thing in Lubbock compared to San Antonio or Dallas. They're a little bit behind on the upgrades. So they don't value it as much as Dallas people do. There's a bunch of apartments in Dallas and they have different levels of upgrades, but in Lubbock, it's just kind of behind. And another thing is in Lubbock, houses are a lot cheaper than in the Dallas market. So you can't just come in and put an awesome upgrade and think that you're going to get $200 in rent or something like that. Because once you get to a certain threshold, then they're like, well, I could just buy a house for that. So it's a little bit different. Also, another thing with the upgrades is, especially after COVID, was labor shortages. I mean, we have it in Dallas and there's tons of people here. Imagine being in a smaller market, right, where there's not that many contractors. I mean, even in Lubbock right now at our other property, our landscape, we have a contract to do landscaping. The owner of the landscaping company can't get people to mow the grass. So he was out there last time we were in Lubbock. He was out there on a rotting lawnmower mowing the grass. The owner of the company. I mean, that's funny. It's insane. So it's just a different market, especially in Lubbock, with just being behind.
But that's very important to know the market. Know what upgrades are actually going to result in an increase in rent. Know that you have to be careful of labor shortages. Know that you're going to have to find different vendors, and you may have to be careful on pulling the plug on somebody because if you don't have somebody else lined up, you don't want to be stuck. And then rent, and that's one rental increases in your pro forma. I have to imagine that from being in a tertiary market versus in a major market, you build in less increases in rent bumps over the life of your business plan. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, at Courtyards on the Park, when we did the pro forma, we didn't even have increase in rent at all.
No rent increase. So your business plan was take
No.
it from 50% to what percent?
To like 90%.
To 90%, but keep
sell.
the same rent.
Yes. And then in our other apartment in Lubbock Lakeway that we own currently right now, I don't remember the performer off the top of my head, but yeah, I mean, we obviously own in courtyards. We knew what was happening. There's very little increase in rent. It's more just we bought it from a 20-year owner. And so it was just a management play pretty much, and doing a little bit of CapEx, a little bit of amenities. We added a few minor amenities there, just made it prettier, painted the exterior, and yeah, just getting professional management. And that's our play. It wasn't increase rents by $200 or anything like that. You can't do that. And there's a lot of people that are getting into Lubbock that may or may not know that you can't do the Dallas thing in Lubbock.
Right. So you confused me a little bit. Are you talking? Did you buy another complex in Lubbock? So you had the 103.
Oh,
unit,
yes.
And then you bought another one?
Yes. So we bought, so with the 16 unit, the four of us, me, Mac, Tim, and Jimmy owned, we did a 1031. So we sold the 16 unit, and then we rolled that into 120 units.
Holy cow. So just the four of you bought
Yeah,
that
just the four of us.
And rolled from a 16 unit to a 120 unit. Mm-hmm. Wow.
In Lubbock, yes.
That's huge.
Yeah, so it's just the four of us that own it. So that's a lot of people don't know about that property because
I didn't
we
know
didn't
about that
syndicate.
Because you didn't
Yeah, we
syndicate
didn't
it,
syndicate
right?
that one.
But
yeah.
Now most people listening probably know what a 1031 exchange is, but just briefly talk about, what is a 1031 exchange and why did you guys do that? And then I think most importantly is like, all right, how much cash flow was the 16 unit kicking off versus, now you guys are in a 120 unit deal? Because that's the benefit, right? By rolling up and going bigger.
Yeah. So the 16 unit, we, like I said before, it was a hairier deal. So we had to re-tenant the whole property. So we didn't technically make any cash flow. It was more just get in and get out, and sold that. So we made about, I don't know, $400,000 in equity on that deal. And then rolled that $400,000 into the down payment for the 120 unit apartment complex. So the 1031 is it's a tax benefit, but you don't make any money off of selling the property. You just roll the money into the next deal.
Right.
So that's what we did.
And you have no tax consequence on that. So
no tax consequence.
It rolls in tax free into the next deal. So that's what you guys did. So now you're in this 120 unit, and what is that looking like?
Yeah, so we're actually considering selling that deal pretty soon. Again, we're more all focused on the 1031. We're not really focused on cash flow. We're making cash flow on all of our other deals. So we technically aren't making a ton of money on I don't know how. I mean, we're making something, but we're more just transitioning into keep rolling it. And then when we sell that deal, we're looking at buying an apartment probably in Dallas. We're looking at a bunch of different markets, but we have about $4 million in equity currently on that deal. So then that would buy us about $12 to $15 million deal, let's say in Dallas.
Hold on a second.
So we'll roll the $4 million.
Hold on a second. Did I just hear that right? So you started with a 16 unit. It ended up with a $400,000 gain. You did a 1031 exchange, so no tax consequence. Bought a 120 unit out in Lubbock. And now you're saying that you have a $4 million gain on that 120 unit?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like, this is the thing about real estate. I mean, think about how much money you would have. How long would it take the four of you to save your way to $4 million in equity? I
know. It's crazy.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
The amount, and it was rolled tax-free. So now if that $4 million is going to roll into another large property, and then that gain may be equity. Maybe,
yeah, even if we double,
it really is,
yeah, because
is bananas.
Yeah, because I mean, technically, if you double it every, let's say, 3 to 5 years, if we roll the $4 million equity into another deal for $15 million, you would hope to be able to sell that and make another double it. So that'd be $8 million, then roll it, and then roll it every 3 to 5 years. So that's kind of like our baby, this 1031 we have going on. The syndications are awesome as well. It's different. It's a different game, but for all four of us are all about just rolling it and not really worrying too much about cash flow and all the things. It's all about just selling it higher and rolling it.
That's fantastic. So there's a play for the 1031 and doing it with just a few partners, and then there's a play for the syndication. So where did the syndication deals kind of play in your strategy with you and Jimmy?
Yeah, so we have some pretty big goals this year where we want to buy a deal every quarter between 20 and 40 million. So at the end of the year, we'd like to have over 100 million in assets under management. So that B class, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, 35 corridor. That's kind of like where we're looking. But again, we have this 1031, so we're always looking for a $12 to $15 million good asset, B class, Dallas, something like that. So we kind of have like two buckets we're looking for. And then obviously we've seen how rapidly the 1031s move. So we're always looking for another little guy just to create a small partnership with a few people that we can actually buy ourselves, not syndicate, and then keep rolling that as well.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by the 1031s move fast? And
well, just like what I said earlier, how we bought the 16 unit for less than $1 million, and then we got in. I don't remember how much we had to put into that. Probably, let's say, 200,000, 300,000 or so, and then that rolled into $4 million in 4 years. Yeah. We're always looking for another type deal to create another 1031 opportunity to buy with a few people.
Think of me.
To then, to then keep.
I'll partner with you.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So we have like a few different buckets, but our main focus is definitely syndication, 20 to 40 million, in the big markets like Dallas and Houston.
Fantastic. Hey, so now you got the other deal in Lubbock, and then you've done a few deals in San Antonio as well. Is that right?
So we have 2 more deals in San Antonio. We have a 116 unit C-class deal. And then we have, we just bought in October, 168 unit apartment complex in San Antonio. It's a C-class in a B area, which we're super excited about.
And that one,
so we bought,
that was your biggest deal, right?
Yeah, that one's our biggest deal to date. We bought it for $16.75 million. We raised about $6 million on that deal as a syndication. And we got, it's a hell of a deal. We're super excited about this one. We've owned it for about, 3 months or so. And we're already going over projected rents. We bought it at a really good time at a really good price.
That's fantastic. So,
yeah,
your journey, it's funny because you were single family, flip, and there's a lot of people out there that do that, right? And they want to get into multifamily, and then they think maybe I'm going to do duplexes and threeplexes and fourplexes, and maybe in a few years I'll go to an eightplex. And then all of a sudden, I hear your story, and it's like single family flips, 16 unit, then 100 unit, then 116, then 168, and you kind of just talked just there as like, oh, we bought a 16.75 million, we raised 6 million, like it was easy. But
yeah,
3 or 4 years ago, you probably would have been scared to do something like that.
Oh, for sure.
So how does that change over time? How does it go from like, oh my gosh, that seems so out of, the possibilities, to holy cow, well, we did that. Now let's put on another 100 million this year.
Yeah.
How do you get there?
Yeah, it is kind of crazy when I think back of all the things we've done. But I think it's just being, getting comfortable, being uncomfortable is kind of the main motto, I guess, is just putting yourself out there. I read a lot of books. I probably read 12 books a year of just all personal development, mindset, you have to keep growing. And it's interesting because we just closed a $16.75 million deal in October. And we're touring. Me and Jimmy toured last week, I think 3 properties for $50 million. And so it's like, wow, that 16 unit was so small. Right.
But that was,
and we just closed it.
That was big at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. I think mindset's everything. And I think sometimes people hold themselves back and they don't realize it's them. It's not what they can do. It's just limited mindset.
Yeah. So I would say I completely agree. Mindset is so huge. What do we mean by mindset? It just means that you believe you can do it, right? Versus telling yourself you can't. But the other thing I would say is that, taking action and, doing something leads to growth. So like at the time, 16 units seemed like a big deal, right?
For sure.
But if you didn't do that 16 unit, you probably would never have been thinking about 106 unit, right?
Definitely.
And then it just kind of, all right, what's next? And I don't know if you're like me, but for me, I love when I'm doing something that I haven't done before. That's like
oh, for sure.
That's when all the juices are flowing. Like, all right, can we make this happen? Versus, look, you guys said you did over 100 house flips. After a while, I have to imagine that kind of got repetition. Like you were like, all right, what's next?
Yeah. It's on autopilot at this point, the flips. And actually we just, we're not even looking to buy flip houses. But we had one fall in our laps. We took a look at it. We made an offer. We just got the contract signed yesterday. So we have another flip all of a sudden. And we had a conversation. Is it worth our time? But it's so automated and it's so easy. It's like, why not? Right. Why not just make a little bit of money? We have so it's so interesting because back in the day, even the flip houses was hard. I was over there all the time, second guessing my design thoughts. And now it's just like, all right, go. It's so crazy.
That's crazy. It's crazy. So the other thing, I've mentioned this on the last few episodes is like, it's a ripple effect. So it's not just about Kathryn and Jimmy anymore, right? You end up going from a 16 unit up to 100 unit. And then all of a sudden I have to believe that you guys have other people in your network that are like, how are you guys doing this? Like, how did you go from flipping houses to being in these large multifamily deals? And then if you counsel 1 or 2 or 3 other people, like that ends up, they get involved. And then all of a sudden they've got people that they teach and it's a ripple effect,
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah. We were pretty heavily in the single family space and all of our friends were in single family. And so a lot of them are investing with us, because they don't really understand multifamily, but they want to be a part of it, so it's pretty cool. Them just saying, we want to watch the updates and we want to understand it. We don't want to do it, right, but we're so curious on how you're doing this and what you're doing. And eventually I want to do it. But some people, are like, well, I'm still doing it single family or doing this over here, but I want to watch on the sidelines and pick your brain.
Watch on the sidelines, but also some of them are stepping up and investing as a limited partner, right?
Yes,
so,
for sure.
So, and you talked about your first deal that went full cycle, you more than doubled people's money and investors' money in a little over 3 years. I mean, just think about that. If somebody invests $100,000 and then all of a sudden 3 years later they get their $100,000 plus another $100,000, it's like,
yeah,
hey, let's do that again. You know?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, it was great when we sold when we sold Courtyard on the Park in April. We closed. We were raising money a few months later, and a lot of people were just like, "All right, I'm in again. Let's keep rolling this money." And so it's just a good feeling. You know, we had a party, and it's just a feel good. It's a feel good,
right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a feel good business. I mean, it's kind of fun because you get to partner with your friends. You get to have your friends involved in what you do rather than some people just saying, I don't understand, and asking a bunch of questions. Like, just come on with us, you know, even if you want to put a little bit of money in it. Like, I have a friend that put barely any money in our deal, but they really wanted to go along for the ride and couldn't put too much. And it's super cool having conversations at dinner about how our property's doing, even though they didn't really be able to invest a lot. It's just, it's cool seeing people super excited about what you're doing and having some money in it to even get more excited.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So a few things on that. One, I interviewed somebody that they did a pretty cool thing where it actually was one of the investors that had a lot of money came up with the idea that to form an LLC and then give all the employees of that company the ability to invest in that LLC. The LLC then was the investor in the deal, and that gave all the employees, even though they didn't have the money to put down $50,000 or $75,000 or $100,000, that they were able to invest something into that LLC, and you know they had interest in the property doing well. You know, not just from getting in W-2, but also having some equity ownership, which was pretty cool.
That is cool.
Another thing you said was feel good business. And, you know, I think that everybody comes at it a little differently. Like I've met some syndicators that, you know, they just have a heart for like the tenants and, you know, setting up, having charities come on and, maybe giving backpacks to the kids going back to school and, you know, creating community and you know, I'm sitting in church and I've heard for years, like, you know, serve, right? And like for me, I'm more of a business guy, numbers guy, and that's where I get charged up with what like you just did for all those people. Like I get charged up by helping grow the wealth of all the limited partners. It's like, it's so different. I have another business. You know, my wife and I own the business, and all the profit comes to our family, right? But in the syndication space, it's like people, you know, provide, you know, share in that ownership, and then you're managing that deal. And then if you double somebody's money, like how great of a way of serving is that? You know, they all have different needs for it. Some might buy a car, some might have college education or retirement or just want to roll it into the next deal. But I think it's a way of serving also.
Yeah, no, I definitely think. And when I love building communities through our apartments as well. I mean, that really gets me charged up. I'll never forget, I was working with Aaron Katz on a property when I was working with Brian Amos, and he hired us to help facilitate the CapEx budget. Anyways, he was putting in a playground, and so I was out. This was probably back in 2013 or something, but I was out with a measuring tape, and all these kids were playing soccer in the dirt field, and I was like, "Hey, you know, kids, can you help me do this measuring tape?" Because I had to keep like moving it down the road because it was like a big area.
Long enough.
So I got the kids, and it wasn't long enough. So I got the kids involved in helping me hold the thing, and they were like, "Well, what are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, I'm measuring the space to put in a playground." And I'll never forget, those kids just screamed. You know, they're literally kicking a ball in dirt, and that was like my first like, oh my gosh, this is like a big deal for people.
Yeah, think about the kid. I mean, the kid is like, kid can't afford to, you know, and he sees his parents, and maybe his parents can't afford it, but like all of a sudden he sees the the apartment complex putting it in for their benefit. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was super awesome. So that was, after that, I was just like, all right, this is community. I mean, people actually live here. I mean, yeah, you're making money and you're implementing business plans, but at the same time, like, I like to think about it from the resident standpoint on what they would actually want and what would make their lives better if it's just, having someone dressed up as Santa Claus for the kids to go tell Santa what they want for Christmas. I mean, that's a huge deal for them, even though it costs us like $50 for a Santa suit. It's just like little things. It's a huge impact, but it doesn't have to be a big whole ordeal,
Right. Absolutely. So, talk about being a woman in the industry. I mean, there's more and more women in the industry, but I think it could be intimidating, for somebody that's listening that wants to get in. So what's your take on, give some inspiration to the women out there to get involved?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely intimidating. I mean, when you go to a conference or something like that, a lot of the girls are the wives, just trying to see what's going on. And I feel like sometimes back in the earlier years when we were, when it was me and Jimmy, I think a lot of people thought I was Jimmy's wife and I was just there hanging out and wasn't really there, being part of the industry.
Well, the combination of that and also Jimmy can be pretty outspoken and Kathryn could be a little bit, quiet at times. So I could see that playing out like that.
Yeah. So it took a little bit of time for be like, no, I'm actually a partner. I'm not just a wife. But yeah, I mean, I think once you kind of are around enough times, people actually enjoy hearing from the woman's side on their take. And, I'm in the construction side, I guess, and kind of like doing the design and stuff. So I think a lot of people like talking to me about amenities and different design aspects of, I guess, of multifamily. But yeah, I mean, it takes a little bit of time, but the more podcasts you get on and the more, just being a part of the meetups and conferences and stuff like that, I think you get a lot of respect pretty quickly because you are one of the only girls that are actually involved.
Right. I asked that question to one other woman. She said, I go to conferences and who do the guys want to talk to? Another guy or talk to me? Like, she's pretty confident about it. But, the thing is that, whether you're a guy or a girl, like going to your first meetup, going to your first conference, going to, is scary. Right? I mean, you don't know who you're going to meet and, what they're going to ask you and you don't want to feel dumb. But you have to do it. You have to push yourself to get uncomfortable and you learn something and you realize that, look, we all started with 0 properties, right? Everybody has to have their first multifamily property. And then it builds off of that. So, everybody doesn't start out with 1,000 units. We interview a lot of people that have thousands of units, but they all started with one and they started, their education the same way. Books, podcasts, meetup groups, conferences. So you got to get out there and do that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think even just going to conferences and just learning the lingo so you could actually have a real conversation was very helpful just to kind of understand what the cap rate means, and have like a real, and not just say, wait, what is that? Because then, if you just say, I don't know what cap rate is, then some people might not think you know what you're even talking about. So it's good just to go to conferences just to learn the lingo and just kind of know the basics. So then you can have real conversations and start learning and then going home and Googling it or, figuring out what exactly you're saying because it probably went over your head for the first few times.
Yeah, absolutely.
Had conversations.
You're not going to know everything all at once. It's going to happen over time. So now your husband's not in the business, multifamily business.
No.
So is he happy that you are?
Yeah. No, he likes it.
That's a pretty easy answer.
It works out.
After hearing the gains, right? Like, hey, in the beginning, it's like, what are you doing? And then now it's like, hey, get out there, do some more. Like that.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. For the first few years, I mean, we were just living off of his income, and everything that I was making was just going back into the business. So it was, it was a little bit of a sacrifice, I guess, at the beginning, and it's still, we're still creating, wealth, I guess. But yeah, I mean, he enjoys it. Eventually, I'd like for him to be a little bit more active. He's right now he sells wine, and he's like a really good conversationalist. Like he's good at meeting people and talking to people, and he's in sales. So I'd like for him to get a little bit more in multifamily, but right now he's just focused on.
So does he work for somebody else in the wine business?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So talk a little bit about the benefit of you being a full-time real estate professional and how that's helped you two collectively from a tax standpoint.
Yeah. So right now, they have the bonus depreciation, which is a huge tax advantage currently. So so every year I have enough depreciation to offset his income. So together we make $0. And we have 2 kids. We have the dependents.
You make more than $0, but you don't pay tax.
Yes, right. I don't. Yeah, they think we make $0 on paper, and then every year we get a sizable check from the IRS because he was paying taxes throughout the year, and then we pretty much get those taxes back through a check from the IRS. So it's super. It's great.
I mean, a lot of people that are in the business, they understand that, but then there's people that's completely foreign to, and for me, I didn't understand it until I got into the business. But if you're a husband and a wife, if one or the other is classified as a full-time real estate professional and say the other person is a W-2 employee, the person that is a full-time real estate professional may be involved in a lot of real estate transactions where they actually show paper losses based on the depreciation. Yep. And because it's a married couple, you can take those losses and cover the income that the spouse is making in their W-2. And so that is huge. And like for me, I remember my grandfather told me a long, long time ago, Darren, you should get involved in, taxes because that's the biggest expense. And I kind of always, just let it fly off, off my shoulders and not think about it. But when you think about, I've written some massive. But
it's super boring too.
Yeah, I've written some massive checks though to the government.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, when I got involved in real estate, and I didn't have to write those checks anymore, that's huge because that compounding impact of putting that money back into the real estate market it can be massive.
Yeah, I mean, even if you just take the money that you were going to pay to the IRS and put it back into an apartment complex. I mean, not only are you, depending on the deal, but double your money. You could use that to just build wealth by putting an apartment 3 to 5 years, doubling your money, and then just building wealth just on that money you're going to pay the IRS.
Yeah, I'm 51, and like when I have people that they're in their 20s or early 30s, and they contact me off Instagram or whatever, and I'm like, I wish I started doing this 20, 30 years ago. I mean, the compounding impact is just massive. So what would be some of your advice for not just women, but just first timers that want to get involved maybe in their first passive deal? Like what should they do?
I mean, really, like me and you, we got a mentor. I think just getting a mentor just to understand, the basics and helping hold your hand to know what's a good deal, what's not a good deal. Because the last thing you want to do is just get into a passive deal without understanding. So you really want to do your homework, get a mentor, go to conferences, just go to meetups. Even if you meet one person that you hit it off with and can just kind of bounce ideas off of would be super helpful. And I think just getting involved, just doing as much as you can. Obviously, one of the I would tell anyone that's looking into getting into real estate is read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I mean, I think just getting involved. I think the more that you're involved, the more the fear goes away, because it's super scary getting into a passive deal if you're not in real estate. So just reading the books, going to the seminars, being around people that are making a lot of money, and kind of being able to maybe send them an email and saying, hey, is this a good deal? I think would really help.
I think those are
make it a little bit easier.
Great suggestions. I think the first thing is you got to, which is different from the way most of us are brought up and trained. But I think you have to be accountable for your investment dollars. You got to be, I know I was guilty of, all right, put 10, 20% over in the stock market and then just hope that it's going to grow. Right. But what I've learned is, no, that's your money, and you need to understand where you're putting that money and where you're investing it. And are you allocating that capital in the best possible places? And, real estate could be a place where you should start to learn and possibly diversify into versus just putting all your eggs into the stock market. So that's I think the first thing. And then once you make that decision, then like you said, read books, listen to podcasts, go to conferences, meet people. And I love that. I love your response that if you meet one person that you click with, that becomes a resource that you can just be like, I don't understand this. Like, why are you doing this? And what are your returns? And is it real? That was one of the things that when I got involved, I was like, is this real? Are people really making this money, or is this, out of thin, or is this some kind of scheme, And
I know it seems schemy, but it's real.
Right. It's real. Like, people are actually making this money. It's crazy. So, hey, you talked about, I was going to ask you your next big stretch goal, but you talked about you and Jimmy want 100 million in assets in 2022.
Yes.
And what?
Yeah, one a quarter.
And what'd you do in 2021?
2021, we bought our
$16
million deal.
16 million. So you're going to go from 16 million to 100 million. That's mindset, right? I had breakfast with you and Jimmy the other day, and both of you believe that you're going to do it, right?
Yeah. No. Yeah.
I could see it. 16 million to 100 million, and you guys wholeheartedly believe that you can do it, and I hope that you do.
Thanks.
If somebody, I don't know, what do you like to do outside of work for fun?
Well, I have two kids.
How old?
6. My boy that's 6, and a girl that's 3. So really just hanging out with family, doing, I like to go on hikes, biking, just being outside, nature, doing family stuff, traveling. If you can see behind me, I have my world map over here.
Fantastic. Where's the next place you guys are going to go?
Actually, we're going to Napa next weekend.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Have a little wine.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It's nice when your husband works in the wine industry.
Yeah, so he knows where to go, and he knows what they're talking about. Whenever I go for wine tasting, they're like, this has a little bit of this in it and a little bit of that in it. I'm like, all right, let me just taste it. It tastes good to me.
Just give me the wine.
So, hey, if listeners want to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to do that?
You could go to our website, high5multifamily.com. It's just HIGHFIVE multifamily. Or if you want to just email me directly, my email is Kat Schmeltz. It's KATSCHMELTZ @gmail.com. And if you have any questions, please reach out. Yeah, I'd love to help.
Fantastic. Well, you guys, you're a breath of fresh air. I know that, the podcast thing isn't always your thing, but I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your knowledge with all the listeners. And listeners, I hope that you enjoyed that one. Both Kathryn and Jimmy are great people, and definitely reach out and get to know her better. I appreciate it. Until next week, signing off.
All right. Thanks, Darren. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for watching Darren Batchelder's Real Estate Investing Show. If you liked the episode, please click the like button and subscribe to the show. If you already are subscribed, then thank you. And please share the show with a friend. Check out other free resources at darrenbatchelder.com/learn.